Hello and welcome to Connected, a digital show by ConnectCareHero that is dedicated to informing and influencing the future of social engagement services for older adults and senior living. Each month, we provide industry professionals with the space to share their journeys and lessons learned in caring for the aging population. I'm your host, Tonu Prince, CMO and co-founder of ConnectCareHero. Excited for today's show, which centers on entrepreneurship and senior living. It's an honor to have Bojie Mungale as our guest. By way of introduction, Bojie is a serial entrepreneur. He is a co-founder and a second generation operator in senior living. Together with his family, he helps to run Casa de Alegre. And when he's not making an impact in the lives of young professionals through his work, he enjoys immersing himself in culture and traveling, and also have a curiosity in UX design. It's an honor to have Bojie here on Connected. So Bojie, welcome.
Oh, thank you, Tori, for having me. Hello, everyone.
Nice. And really quickly, can you briefly describe how you got to where you're at today in senior living? Walk us a little bit along your professional journey.
Yes, so senior living, I would say it starts probably. I come from a serial entrepreneur family, and we've had a ton of businesses. And I was thinking about it, and I was like, it's important to center kind of our unicorn, as they say in the tech world, what our business as a family was, which was magic karaoke microphones. And so it was this South Korean technology. And if you ever sang karaoke in the 90s, you had to use these discs that had like 10, 10 songs. This microphone had like 800 songs. And so my mom was at the right place, right time, and just became the distributor. And so as a kid, I'd help her out with the sales. And so that's kind of, imagine a living room filled with that. So I just know business through and through. Where senior living, my mom, as she was doing the karaoke hustle, she would meet home care owners in the Lakewood area, a lot of Filipino owned and operated home care owners. And so she would see the business, she had friends that would do it. And then eventually one home came along that she said, this is it. And so within a month, closed on the house. And that was in 2005. And so we, as a family, began our adult family home care in 2005. And so I got into senior care because of my late father. In 2016, we lost him unexpectedly, and he was serving as our resident manager. So he had a pretty big responsibility, which is how do you help residents go from where they're at to where they can be, which is at home care. So his job was to help families kind of make that decision through the contracts, talk to the doctors, kind of the real customer facing stuff. So he was the heart of the home. And so when we lost him suddenly in 2016, it was very clear that I got hired and we were pretty much like grieving as we should, because it's honestly the biggest thing we've gone through as a family. But business continues. And my mom just knew it had to continue, where as much as we were grieving, we were responsible for seniors. And so I immediately signed up to become a resident manager, take over a lot of those duties that my dad did have. And that's how I got into senior care, as a resident manager. And currently, I am in sales school right now through the University of Washington, where it's basically a chance to learn about best practices. And that's kind of the area of focus I had as a resident manager, is how can I be better at the budgetary responsibilities and also the longevity of our home care. And so that's kind of how I got into senior care. Is I wear two hats basically, as a resident manager and then a sales manager.
Man, first of all, thank you so much for sharing a little bit about your family, and have our sympathy for your dad. I know he would be very proud to see that you're continuing this legacy, you and your mom, and wearing multiple hats at such a young age can't be an easy thing. What would you say is the problem that you're trying to solve at the end of the day?
Mm. So from a healthcare perspective, there's two. One is, and I think every entrepreneur has this, and maybe because I've been around UX, which is user experience, kind of how we look at data. This big problem I want to solve for our family is, where are we day to day with our business? And so what is the amount of information that we have to see so that an owner can look at everything? And so before, it would be just your bank account or how much money you make. I think that's a very simple way to look at the success of your business. But from a home care perspective, I thought, if I made this dream data board, it would not only have like where are we at with revenue and expenses and budgets, but also is it hitting our strategic goals? And so that's been the theme of the problem is there's so much that we can have in one screen that
Hmm.
as a team, we can really look at our next year. And I think 2020 and 2021 gave us that feast and famine comparison.
I'm curious, like we said on the top of the show, you are a young entrepreneur, a young professional, and you are working in a space that is predominantly dominated by older individuals. What are some of the challenges and also responsibilities, but also opportunities that exists for both our generation as well as the older generations that you're serving?
Absolutely. I would say so. A big part of my training is I was a nanny for 6 months while I was building my startup. So I found this role on Craigslist. It was either working as like a after school teacher and helping out kids, or this like family who needed a nanny. I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. And that was kind of my boot camp on house management. So I would say that's the challenge is I think a lot of people in their 20s to even mid 30s don't have this value of being rooted, because I think the hope is you're out there seeing the world and traveling. So I definitely know there's a learning curve for a lot of young people, because having roots is something that doesn't think you don't think about your 20s in that way. But I know that was my challenge, was how do I build a business and have a home I have to take care of. So that's a huge challenge that I think the learning curve will be shorter for entrepreneurs who have managed a home. And that really could look like caregiving. And I think that was my challenge, which was I was kind of being an ultimate bachelor, building my business, having fun on the weekends. And then I have to take care of an 8-year old and 10-year old and make sure
Mhm.
they get where they need to be. So props to our mothers and people who have a lot of people to take care of.
Yes.
I got a crash course in that. So that's definitely a challenge that I think, looking backwards, people who have had intense caregiving opportunities, that's, I think, something I have to say, like, if you have that, you're naturally going to be successful in this space. An opportunity is there are such unique revenue opportunities. Like, that's been my curiosity, is like, how do you make money in this space? And so in our business community, we're kind of a mid price point, right? So you have extremely high end, top of the line nursing homes that charge in like the tens and thousands and above. Then you've got the home care space and one on ones and nursing facilities, skilled nursing facilities. And then you've got folks that have homes or opportunities for like Medicaid and kind of on the lower end for per day or per month costs.
Mhm.
So there are ways to look at the senior care when it comes to revenue and be like, there are limitless combinations of revenue opportunities, because the way that seniors and their families pay for services is not one revenue source itself. So you're looking at your potential business from their end too. It's like, how am I going to afford quality? Or if I am going to go without cost, what's a more important part of care? So I think revenue is probably an awesome opportunity for people who think about what they're already doing, which is care, and why not make care a way I make money? I think that's very common in childcare. And then the last thing I'll say is like, because I'm a second generation owner, as a young person, there's this interesting thing that I've had to do with my mom, which is what are her values and what does she care about from a strategic perspective?
Mm.
And then I think market normal, what's going to make us survive, right? And you got to meet halfway. And I did an exercise with her on the values front. I'm like, what do you care about as a provider of care? And then she gave her, we had flashcards and she wrote these
Mhm.
like couple of words down. And then I said, okay, if we want to be successful in the senior care space, even with the pandemic, these are some of the values we need to have. Like, we need to be innovative. We need to be ahead of the curve, right? So that's where I got to share her my values. And then that's really, I think, a unique way to look at your business is if you are in a bigger team, that's another exercise that has given us clarity on like what's next and what to look forward to.
As you think about the market and like market fit for a lot of seniors, it all depends on people's budgets and so forth. What are some gaps that exist when it comes to services for Black and Brown older adults, based on what you've researched, based on your own experience as a second generation operator, and how are you positioning yourself to solve some of these gaps?
Torio, I applaud that question very much. During the last 5 years, ever since I've joined this space, systemically, there is not enough of this dialogue. So I value the question because it's been a very personal one too. Number one, if I were to be honest, it is about the inequities around housing, and specifically generational wealth that comes with when someone owns a home, that asset becomes a source of income, or in this case, a potential revenue source for us. Like if someone has a home, they can sell it and then they have more options. So I think number one for Black and Brown seniors, it depends if they own their home. And that is in itself a systemic issue loaded with a century or two of reasons, we can all research, but really that's what I've learned is it is around housing. Number two, it is information. I think because generations of families taking care of each other, which is more a Black and Brown common thing, that caregiving is assumed of the family. I think that information gap just continues to widen, where a lot of families who have historically seen what a caregiver does in the home liken to having people in the home, if you catch my drift, that could be where people in the learning of, oh, I need a caregiver now. And so when I was hired as a nanny, yes, I was honored to take care of two kids, but I wasn't like blind to the fact that the type of support I'm giving is similar to structures we've seen before, where that isn't common in Black and Brown families, where your uncle will take care of you or your neighborhood will take care of you. So that information gap just continues as two different values. And then the third thing that could stand out is, again, like cultural norms. So a lot of Black and Brown families take care of each other. I was babysat by a family friend. And so that's where my childhood, I just look at aunties and uncles. Like I would never see a nanny taking care of me, right? So that's kind of where, as I did the nanny experience, I learned that, oh, wow, my Filipino heritage, you have your aunt take care of you. My Samoan side, you just like run on the island, right? So I think a big part of it is cultural norms where, Black and Brown folks look at caregiving and their seniors differently. So those are some of the three things that come to mind when I think about that question.
No, I love all of those points that you made. And looking at that lens, then, if you have elders in your adult home, how are you all positioning yourself to provide culturally relevant programs for all elders of all background? Is that important to you all when you're making decisions around programming? And then how are you curating these programs?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's super important. So a big part of, so in sales, in our sales cycle, there is this document called the preliminary service plan. And it's, I believe, the most important part of understanding what the care is. And not just from a clinical perspective, but like, who is Torno? Who is Bojie? And that question around like your spirituality, your heritage, your favorite music, that's where I start to see what makes this person them. And so in our home, we love music. And so culturally speaking, knowing their favorite music, such as bluegrass, fado from Portugal, or Hawaiian music, that's how I start to think, oh, let's make this resident kind of the star of the day with their music choice, right? We've got like this Google Voice thing where we're like, okay, Google, right? So that's kind of the theme first, is like the preliminary service plan gives us a clue on who they are and what their culture is. And then over the relationship, kind of learn, okay, let's introduce some of their favorite foods and maybe learn more about their family history and kind of earn their trust, so we can start suggesting things such as, let's make Portuguese soup tonight. Like, do you want to try a recipe from your family? Do you have it? So that relationship building is where cultural relevant content comes in, is through the kitchen, right? So we'll start at like the preliminary service plan, the music and food. And then last but not least, kind of their end of life requests. I think that's when there's an interesting thing where end of life conversations and culture really come to play. And
Yes.
we have visitors from different faiths come in and check in. And there's this really cool thing where some are Presbyterian, some are Catholic or Lutheran, and you just see very unique approaches to end of life. And that's also something I believe is a part of cultural competent content.
Yeah, and I think it's another way of dignifying an older adult. It's saying like, I value things that you value, and so I want to obviously respect your well wishes, certainly towards the end of the life, and saying like, okay, fine, you are a Methodist, for example. It's important to get you aligned with someone from that faith walk. What are some key lessons that you've learned already in the game so far?
Yes. So I mentioned earlier about your support system, like full stop, that's worth all the money in the world to have a team that you believe in and that believes in you. I use the Justice League theme just because it's an easy one, right? I love Wonder Woman, that's my favorite superhero. But most days I'm like Bruce Wayne. I don't have superpowers. I just have a ton of technology and like, hey, you need to be on my team, Tori, right? So there's this theme around leadership where I think when you're in a team of people, it's who is going to support each other. And I think that's my biggest life lesson. And I've heard it being said, get your board of advisors, which I think is smart, but to be a little bit more accessible. Not everyone knows the idea of a governance structure and yeah, that's very inaccessible. But I would say it's a dream team. So get your dream team right. You're gonna definitely have to refresh those over the years, as life does, but definitely get your core Flash, Cyborg, Aquaman shout out, right? So get your dream team. Number two is around your financial literacy. I think that's kind of where I'm still learning the most because as a builder, I don't have the natural accounting acumen that could make deals different or better. And that's kind of where you got to stay learning and having the opportunity to own your learning curve is something I recommend and I'll own it, right? And just share that with your team. And in my course of the sales program I'm in, I basically told everyone from my accountant to my classmates, like, I want to get better at my finance acumen. The more you own that curriculum and people know you're learning it, you will be surprised if they'll send you things and give you like bits and say, oh, I know someone that you should talk to, right, Boj? Like, why don't you meet this person that has a background in finance? So I think that's kind of where being a lifelong learner, that thing of what you're trying to learn, tell everyone, and you'll be surprised how much easier you'll find. And then the third thing, as far as the lesson in the game, is gotta have fun. I think like part of my sales certificate that has been a huge thing is like if you can bring your authentic energy, and mine is pretty high energy and fun. The energy you put out is what attracts people, and the energy I love is fun, welcoming, and that's my life lesson: is just own the energy that is natural and important to you. And so if you are as calm as a river or as crazy as an ocean, like own it so that the people who you are drawn to, it's a natural thing. And that's kind of where, again, my business partner and mentor and friend, we're still thick as thieves, and my mentees and I are close. I think that relationship building around common energy is something that I definitely know is like a lifelong thing I'll promote.
I appreciate that analogy, calm as a river and wild and reckless as an ocean. Something like that. I might have put my own spin on it, but I love those tips and love the lessons that you're learning already at such a young age in the game. Lastly, as a co-founder, second generation operator within a senior living, and of course an entrepreneur, what does success looks like for Bojie?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. I can tell you what it looks like for the home care and my mom because that's part of what I mentioned earlier. But for me right now, it's to be able to show up every day just ready to play and have fun and grow. So I think I used to be the vision board guy. I still am, right? So I still have a very clear vision of what it looks like. But I've been told, obviously from 2020, coronavirus did a very good job at taking all of our vision boards, rip it in half, and say, what does success look like for you? So success to me feels good. It feels like I'm financially solvent and thriving with my financial goals. Success looks like good health and knowing I'm proactive with that. And then last but not least, just making my own name. I think being the son of very successful parents is something where I am still learning what that means now. But I love the pressure and I look up to the sons and daughters of people who have done big things. So I think it's a acknowledgement that my parents worked really hard for me. And I just want to be able to know that I can honor them. But also, I am not my father. I'm not my mother. I have my own thing. So I'm still figuring it out. But I think it's also just that acknowledgement, like of my roots and where I come from.
Appreciate the fact that your definition of success isn't only about the financial aspect. Yes, that's important and that's a beautiful marker, but it goes beyond that. It's about bringing honor to yourself, and most importantly, it sounds like to your parents. And I think that's a beautiful picture of success. Guys, really appreciate Bojie. Thank you so much for providing us with such enriched insights and just being a young trailblazer. We definitely appreciate having more people like you on this planet, and definitely working in senior living. To learn more about Bojie, make sure you guys check him out on LinkedIn. Also visit his family business at casadealegre.com. And of course, as always, to learn more about the work that we're doing and how we're empowering you and older adults with different resources here at Connect Care Hero, visit us at connectcarehero.com. Thank you.
Thank you guys. Thanks for having me, Tori. Take care.